Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on tonight's show, we got some new Commanders draft intel from ESPN's Jayden Reid, who says that he knows the two positions that the Washington Commanders will be targeting at the top of the NFL draft this year. And then also, there's a new article from Fox Sports that links DK Metcalf, the star receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was just traded last offseason to the Washington Commanders. Could Washington actually pull off a blockbuster trade to go get Metcalf? I'll give you my answer by the end of this video today. But before we get into the content today, guys, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you guys are excited for the NFL draft, just like we are. And if you guys want more draft-centered videos here on the Commanders Report, we're now less than 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL draft in Pittsburgh. If you guys want more draft videos leading up to the big day, make sure you guys let us know by clicking that thumbs up icon to kick off today's show. All right, so now let's get into the latest draft intel from ESPN's Jayden Reid, who is very plugged in and honestly one of the more respectable NFL draft analysts at ESPN, in my opinion, where he says that Washington plans to address wide receiver and cornerback with their first 2 picks in the NFL draft. Remember, the Commanders don't have a second-round pick this year, so their first 2 picks is number 7 overall in round 1 and then number 71 overall in round 3. This is what Reid had to say in the ESPN newsletter today. The Commanders need to be precise with their picks. Wide receiver and cornerback are 2 positions the team is expected to address with its top 100 picks. So, listen, man, I actually tend to agree with Jayden Reid on this. Now, obviously, like if they love Jeremiah Love and he makes it to number 7, it's possible that they could kind of go off their quote-unquote plan and draft him. Or if they love Caleb Downs, they could draft him, or Sonny Styles. He could certainly be in play as well. But I think wide receiver and corner are 2 positions that this team probably should be addressing in the NFL draft this year. We'll start with wide receiver here because we are expecting Brandon Ayuk to sign with the Washington Commanders. You do have Terry McLaurin. That's your kind of number 1 and number 2 punch there. But then after that, you don't have a lot of established depth. You do have De'Ami Brown, who's fine, but I think of him more as a true 4 than as a wide receiver 3. Got a lot of unproven guys like Treylon Burks and Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane. You hope that one of those guys can kind of take the next step next year, but I don't know if you can necessarily count on that at this point in time. And there's a number of really talented, really good wide receivers that are expected to go in round 1 this year. These are the 6 guys that are currently projected inside the top 32 on the consensus big board. And obviously, because the Commanders draft at 7, and if they trade down, they're probably not going to trade down past like pick number 15, I think is probably the floor there. So really the 2 guys that I think are really on the Commanders' radar for this year's first-round draft selection is Carnell Tate out of Ohio State. They've shown a lot of attention to him over the draft process, and same thing goes for Mekhi Lemon, who a lot of people compare to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, of course, this new offense, led by new offensive coordinator David Blau, is inspired by the Ben Johnson offense. And Amon-Ra St. Brown has been a number 1 receiver in a Ben Johnson offense for a long time. I could certainly see the connection if they want to go with the receiver out of USC. But Tate is an excellent downfield threat with over an 85% contested catch rate at Ohio State last year. He is the consensus number 1 wideout in this class. However, this is a deep wide receiver class, guys. It is. And if the Commanders want to find a contributor as a wide receiver 3 on day 1, they can find one in round 3. They might even be able to find one in round 5. All right. Like, that is how good and deep and talented this wide receiver class is. And you guys can take a look at the bevy of options that the Washington Commanders have if they wait until round 3 to select their wide receiver of choice, because you got all these guys that are expected to be in the range of that kind of round 2 or round 3 conversation, and some of these guys are going to be available at pick number 71. Obviously, not all of them will be. I'm sure a number of these guys will be taken before the Commanders pick in round 3, but a lot of them are going to be available for the Commanders if they want to get a bona fide wide receiver 3 on day 2. And there's some other day 2 possibilities here as well. Guys like Deion Burks from Oklahoma, Brennan Thompson, the speedster from Mississippi State, as well as Dazon Stribling. And I'm a big fan of Kevin Coleman Jr. from Mizzou, who reminds me a little bit of like Jordan Addison in terms of their play style. He's not quite Jordan Addison. Addison was absolutely amazing first-round pick, but Coleman, very similar type of receiver that I think could really mix well with the Washington Commanders and what they currently have right now. And because you can get a wide receiver kind of later in this draft, I would say don't sleep on cornerback in round 1 if the Washington Commanders truly want to address cornerback and receiver with their first 2 picks, honestly, I think it's more of a value to go get your corner in round 1 if those are really the 2 positions that you're targeting. Because you take a look here at what the Commanders are dealing with in the cornerback room, and once again, going into this season, it is a big question mark. And this has been a big weakness of the Commanders' roster ever since Dan Quinn took over as the head coach a couple years ago, and even before that when Ron Rivera was here as the head coach. But right now you got Trey Amos coming off that injury. Really like what he showed us on film last year, though. Not a ton of concerns with him. But then, like Samerstill and Amik Robertson, Samerstill's been very up and down throughout his career, still very much an unproven entity in this league. And, he's got a big question mark next to his name heading into the 2026 campaign. Then Amik Robertson, you pay him $8 million a season to come here, but he's kind of coming off a year where he didn't play all that well with the Detroit Lions, if we're being completely honest. He's got some versatility. He's tough. I think that he fits this defense. But right now you got 2 major question marks at the starting cornerback position. And it's not like Akella Witherspoon is just going to, come in and save the day necessarily, right? So I think, a top cornerback, if you could get one of the top guys in this class and to get a literal, like a true number 1 shutdown corner, could completely transform this secondary overnight. Like having a true lockdown number 1 guy that you can just isolate on an island, like it can completely transform a defense, guys, because if you have that guy that you trust on a one-on-one assignment against the number 1 receiver week in and week out, that allows you to shift coverage away from that receiver, and that's going to close up throwing windows for opposing quarterbacks and just make this new defense led by Durante Jones here in Washington that much better. So I honestly think a number 1 corner might be the most impactful pick that the Washington Commanders could make with their round 1 selection. And the top 2 guys in this class are excellent. Mansour Delane from LSU, I think he only allowed like 10 completions last year or something like that, like something ridiculously low. Really good man-to-man corner. And same thing goes for Jermod McCoy, who I think actually had better film than even Mansour Delane back during the 2024 season. Honestly, I think if McCoy came out last year before he got injured, of course, if he would have been healthy for last year's draft class, he would have been the first corner taken last year. And he reminds me a lot of Derek Stingley Jr., who also had injury concerns coming out of LSU a few years back. But ever since the Houston Texans took him with the number 3 overall selection, he's been one of the best corners in football. I think Jermod McCoy could have a very similar type of career trajectory heading into the National Football League. And just frankly, guys, there are some day 2 corners that they could go get. Like let's say they get Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon with their number 7 overall selection and they're trying to draft a corner in round 3. Like there's some guys that have some decent tools and could be starters down the line. I just don't think that the talent and the day 1 readiness of the corners in day 3 or day 2, I should say, are as good as the wide receivers. So I'll say this right now, man. I think the wide receivers that Washington could get in round 3 are more ready to play right away than the corners that they could get on day 2. So I think that if you're going to prioritize wide receiver and cornerback as the 2 positions that you want to attack with these first 2 picks, I think it actually might make more sense to try and get your cornerback in round 1 and then your wide receiver in round 3. But another position that I would say is a pretty big roster need right now is center. And we actually put out a video about this on the channel earlier in the week, where center's a big position of need. And honestly, it's a big mistake that the Washington Commanders have not brought in somebody other than Nick Allegretti this offseason to kind of be that guy at the center position, because it's not a good draft class, in my opinion, guys, at the center position. Like there's some guys with some potential, but I don't know if a lot of these guys are ready to be drafted and then start right away as an NFL starting center from day 1. You can take a look at the top 10 center prospects of this year's NFL draft and where they rank on the consensus big board, and a lot of them are kind of expected to go late day 2, but a lot of them are expected to go on day 3, and the reason for that is that there's a lot of guys in this class that just aren't ready to play right away, and that includes the top guy in this class, in my opinion, Connor Lew, who I think has the potential to be a really good starting center, but he's 20 years old, and he's got a lot of kind of red flags on his film. If you're going to be probably trusting one of these guys on your screen right now to start right away, I would say it's probably Kansas State's Sam Hecht, and you'd probably have to use, your 3rd round pick on him if you want him, and I just think that might be a little bit too early for somebody that I view as a low ceiling, kind of high floor, kind of, decent center prospect. I don't really think he's that good of a prospect. But also Jordan Reid said that Washington, quote unquote, wouldn't mind trading back, quote unquote, a few spots in the 1st round to get an additional draft pick or 2 in the middle rounds. And I think that makes a lot of sense for the Washington Commanders, which is Kind of why we've been hearing all these reports of Adam Peters being open to trading down, taking calls, being open to trading down a few spots is because, if they're going to be trying to get wide receiver and corner, but they also have this big need at center, it makes sense to maybe get another draft pick in round 3 or round 4. And you can easily get that by trading down from the number 7 overall selection, whether it's trading down just a few spots like with Kansas City at 9, or maybe trading down a few more with like Tampa Bay at 15. Those two teams could be looking for edge rusher help by the time we get to the number 7 pick. But, if you do that, you can address all 3 of these needs: wide receiver, corner, and center with your first 3 draft selections this year, which is why I think a trade down makes a lot of sense for the Washington Commanders this year. But take your pick, guys. Between these 4 prospects here at the 2 positions that Jordan Reid claims the Commanders are honing in on with their first 2 picks, which one would you like to take in round 1? Type CT for Carnell Tate, type ML for Mekhi Lemon, type MD for Mansour Delane, or type JM for Jermod McCoy. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today. While I tell you about today's sponsor, let me know, between these 4 prospects, who would you most like to have with our first overall draft pick this year? All right, so now let's talk about some merch that you guys can purchase from our website today. These are our Scary Terry McLaurin t-shirts. $29.99 on our website right now. Chatsports.com/scary is the link. They come in 3 different colors: black, red, and my personal favorite, white. You got those paint splatters in the background. You've got, Scary with the Scream mask on there. I think it's a really, really cool illustration done by our merch guy here at Chat Sports, Arnold. Big shout out to Arnold for this design. And you guys have been buying these things up like crazy. Over 300 of these things have already been sold. So you guys have really been loving them, and you guys have been really showing a ton of support to the channel with this new merch collection that we have pushed. So if you guys haven't gotten yours yet and you want to get yours today, chatsports.com/scary is the link to go to. Greatly appreciate your guys' support for the channel. All right, so now let's shift our focus here to a trade rumor from Fox Sports' Ralph Vacchiano. I hope I'm saying that right. Where he suggests that the Washington Commanders should try and trade for star wide receiver from the Pittsburgh Steelers, DK Metcalf, and they should trade their 3rd-round pick this year in order to do so. This was the trade idea put forth by Vacchiano, where the Commanders get DK Metcalf to pair with Terry McLaurin and, assumingly, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, forming maybe the best wide receiver room in the National Football League, in my opinion, if that were the case. But you have to give up your 3rd-round pick this year at number 71 and your 5th-round pick next year in 2027. This is what Ralph had to say about this particular idea. The idea of the Steelers trading him all depends on what happens with Aaron Rodgers and whether Pittsburgh goes for it all in 2026 or goes into a rebuilding mode. They did just trade for Michael Pittman Jr., so their cupboard wouldn't be completely bare without Metcalf. And Metcalf was a bit of a disappointment last season with just 59 catches for 850 yards and 6 touchdowns as Rodgers struggled to find him downfield. He'd have better luck with the younger, stronger Jayden Daniels throwing him the ball. And the Commanders are desperate for a wide receiver opposite Terry McLaurin. Metcalf cost the Steelers a 2nd-round pick, but after a down year and with 3 years and more than $100 million left on his contract, something less would do. So for me, guys, I think that this trade idea is ridiculous, and I think the chances of it happening are close to 0. First and foremost here, I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers would do this because they are not rebuilding this offseason. He said it all comes down to whether or not they're going for it all or if they're rebuilding. Well, the Steelers have already decided not to cut Patrick Queen. They're not cutting Jalen Ramsey. They're not trading, their veteran players on defense, which is extremely expensive. They're pursuing a 43-year-old or I guess soon-to-be 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers to be their starting quarterback. That's not the behavior of a team that's trying to rebuild. Not to mention they just traded for a 28-year-old receiver. You don't do that if you're thinking about rebuilding. So the Steelers are clearly in win-now mode, so I don't think they feel like it's a good idea to trade DK Metcalf because Michael Pittman Jr. is definitely not a number 1 receiver, whereas Metcalf, I would say, is more of like a 1B type of guy. And then second, I don't even think the Commanders would really think about this because they wouldn't have any draft picks between rounds 2 and 4 if they did this. Like, they would have pick number 7 in the 1st round, and then they would have to wait all the way until round 5 to pick again if they made this trade. I just don't think that the Commanders are interested in that. I think the Commanders are more interested in getting younger and faster. I don't think trading for, an aging, type of receiver here in DK Metcalf is something that's really on their radar as of right now. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade to bring in DK Metcalf and form one of the best wide receiver trios in the National Football League, assuming Brandon Ayuk is on his way to Washington? Give me an A for accept or D for decline. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button for more excellent Commanders coverage for you guys leading up to the start of the 2026 NFL Draft.